Welcome to Divorcing with Dignity, this podcast where we explore the multifaceted journey of divorce and its impact on families. I'm your host, Shoshana Goldstein-Nissenbaum, To'enet Rabbanit, halachic advocate and mediator. And in each episode, we'll delve into a crucial topic, providing insights, expert advice, and practical strategies to help navigate the challenging life and transition with grace, resilience, and dignity. And today, I am privileged to host Dr. Miriam Adahan, who, as I told her, I've been a fan of hers and following her since I'm a teenager in high school. And she asked me to introduce her as a S.O.D.A, survivor of domestic abuse. So that's how I'm going to introduce her. Even though I don't even know if she needs an introduction. I think everybody knows who you are, and I think everybody is a real fan of your amazing work that you've done with children, with women, everything from the Gibor, the cards, and the CBT cards, and Torah Tigers, to your work with Emet, awareness, living with difficult people, including yourself, right? One of my favorite books. So today, we're privileged to have Dr. Adahan share with us her clinical experience, her life experience, and our topic today is resilience, how to help our children, how we can acquire tools and use these tools to help our children transition, not just only transition, but it's ongoing trauma. The trauma doesn't go away. We're not talking about post-traumatic stress disorder. The child is in trauma now. And very often when the child is in trauma, we as the parent is also in trauma as well.
Right.
So we're going to start off with talking about, just if you can give us a general picture, a description of how children internalize the conflict between their parents, whether married or divorced, right? Because even married couples can sometimes have tremendous amounts of conflict, and what are the potential long-term effects of this internalization on their mental health and their future relationships.
So there are physical, emotional, mental, and even spiritual effects of abuse. So I wouldn't be doing this work if I hadn't been a survivor of tremendous domestic violence from the get-go. I was not a wanted child even, and I was blamed for a lot of my own parents' difficulties. So being an unwanted child and then being blamed for a lot of the difficulties in the family, the reason I write books is partly because that was my way of explaining to myself what I had been through, understanding the people who abused me, and understanding what I was meant to do in this world. So one of the things that abuse survivors suffer from, there's often a lot of physical disabilities. I had Crohn's and colitis and irritable bowel syndrome and all kinds of, my thyroid was taken out. I was a mess, okay, even as a child. And my parents did not get divorced, but there was a lot of conflict. And I am a sponge type personality. So divorce really affects everybody very differently. Being a sponge, an empath, I sucked it all in. I was also the scapegoat child. I have to see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted me to go through this because I write books. So to help parents avoid being violent with their own children. I wouldn't have written these books if I hadn't suffered. I'd be in la la land thinking everybody can get along with everybody. Okay, the only reason I can understand abuse is because I've been through it. If you haven't been through it, you don't understand it. And you can't even expect anybody to understand it. You haven't been held hostage in Gaza, nobody can understand. Those who get out, the only people that will really understand them are those that have been there. And so I don't even expect anybody to. So the one thing is that there's often a lot of physical disabilities. The endocrine system, as a lot of, like with women, there's PCOS, there's early maturity, there's early puberty, there's 70% more autoimmune illness among women, especially. They tend to be to absorb it much more in their bodies. So in addition to all the autoimmune illnesses with the digestive problems, okay, that's on the physical level. Then there's an emotional level where, and that's one of the reasons why I teach people how to regulate themselves emotionally. Because if you see dysregulated parents, then you're not going to know how to regulate your own emotions. Children need to see parents who are emotionally regulated. So I learned emotional regulation skills because of what I've been through. I write books because of what I've been through. I help people because of what I've been through. So I see this as just, this is what Hashem wanted because this is how I'm going to help other people. If you haven't been through it, you don't understand it. The major problem with divorce and with living with emotionally dysregulated people is that you cannot build trust in them and in yourself. And this has huge implications across the board, physically and mentally, in every way, and even spiritually. Yeah, how do you trust Hashem that put you in this situation? So everything I did with my children and my grandchildren, I have grandchildren that have been through divorce, and you know, being one night here and one night there and all that kind of stuff. Nobody divorces a basically normal person. People divorce because one of them is mentally unstable. But then, and that creates a lot of shame. There's a book about psychopaths called The Mask of Sanity. And this is one of the big problems is that psychopaths are very good at acting normal. The Mask of Sanity was like, I think, one of the first books written on psychopathy. And because they look very sane to the outside world, they come out like smelling like roses.
Right.
The judges don't get it. The courts, the family courts don't get it. The therapists
the
don't get
social
it.
workers,
The social workers
don't
it
get
takes
it.
two to tango.
The
What's your part?
clinical psychologists who evaluate these people often
They don't get it. They don't get it. I wrote you 22 things that therapists tend to say to victims of abuse that just scramble the brains of the abuse victims. I don't know if you got it. I'm happy to send it to anybody. You can send it on to anybody.
I'll post it, I'll attach it.
Okay, so it's called, if Moshe and Korach would go to therapy together, what Moshe would be told. And there are 22 mind scrambling things that Moshe, being Moshe, could refute. But the average abuse victim, well, these are therapists and judges and lawyers and very intelligent people that are telling me that it's my fault. And I was always told it was my fault. Okay.
I find that the people who are abused, they add on to their abuse by abusing themselves as well.
That's right. So that's exactly the problem. So what I did for myself and my children is I have created a whole, I hope this is going to be the first in a series because I just want to touch on it. I became Malkat HaPitronot. I told my children, I don't get angry because I am the queen of solutions. And I will find a solution. Now, usually where there's a divorce or a contentious marriage, one of them is impulsive and angry a lot because that's how people get control. They're angry, they're intimidating. Anger is a way to dominate and intimidate and humiliate another person. There's no anger without humiliation. Anger is humiliating another person. And okay, so when somebody's angry, all those judges and therapists are, well, why is he angry? There must be a reason. And they don't come up with, it's in order to dominate, humiliate, and intimidate the other person. Okay, it's, well, what are you doing wrong? How come you're not able to please them? So first of all, I announced to my kids and my grandkids that I am the queen of solutions and therefore I don't get angry. When I'm walking on the streets here in remote, if I see kids that are fighting or parents that are angry, I'll just say, you know who I am? I am the queen of solutions. And I'll teach them that we don't have to get angry. We don't have to hurt people. We can find solutions. So the first thing I tell them, and this is what I did with myself, and I have in my office, a picture of the brain. I'll show you what I have. Okay, this is a picture of the brain. Down back here is the primitive brain. It's impulsive. It wants power, control, comfort, and immediate pleasure. And one of the things I would tell, this is my kids and my grandkids, so that they can see who to trust and who not to trust, because trust is the big issue. If you can't trust anybody, your nervous system is constantly agitated. And when the nervous system is agitated, it causes all kinds of physical and emotional problems. So I have to establish trust.
When you can't trust yourself.
Can't trust yourself. So I would tell them, I have a baby brain. I call it the baby brain. In scientific terms, what's called the reptilian brain, but I called it the baby brain because I don't want to scare kids. Everybody has a baby brain. Everybody wants to hit, kill, spit, choke, hurt, eat it, buy it. Okay, that's the baby brain. And then we have a smart brain up here. And that brain is where we find solutions and don't hurt people and think of the effect of our behavior on others and think about long-range goals. So that's the basis of all my work. Okay. And then I decided, number one, I have to be in my smart brain. I will tell them, okay, from the age of 3, I write down, actually, I talk about their victories from a very early age. I talk about my victories. So the baby brain tells me to scream, I can't handle this. And my smart brain says, I'll handle it. Calm down. I have to be the model of emotional regulation. Now, I'm not. I come from a violent home. And then I married somebody violent. Okay, so how am I supposed to do this? Nobody ever taught me this. And psychologists don't teach this. And they won't let me teach it. It's very interesting. They're very much against giving people tools. So I am the tool lady. In fact, my granddaughter at the age of 9 wrote this book called Queen of Solutions. And she illustrated it and wrote it at 9. And she teaches parents how to be emotionally regulated. And their language with each other is like, well, you're in your baby brain, so I'm not going to talk to you right now or play with you. I'll wait till you're in your Bulgare brain, in your smart brain. And this is how they talk. Or you're in your baby brain. Can I help you go up to your smart brain, your Bulgare brain? This is their language of my kids and my grandkids. Baruch Hashem, none of this would have happened if I hadn't suffered abuse myself. So I'm not bitter about what I went through. It produced a lot of help for other people. And I have a whole toolkit that helps people become the king or queen of solutions. This also helps children very much to see who's sane and who's insane. Because insane people will always accuse sane people of being insane.
Right.
That's one of their tricks.
I find that also in the more Haredi world the deeper into the Haredi world, in other words, the truer on the scale, when parents get divorced, it's asur to get divorced. You're not allowed to get divorced. It's a horrible thing. The mizbeach cries, and there's a lot of guilt and shame. So they have to have a good excuse of why they're getting divorced. And that good excuse has to be that the other parent, the ex-wife, the ex-husband has to be some monster, right? So whom they themselves might be the insane one, is going to paint a picture and publicly condemn or not publicly because they're tzaddikim, they never talk about their ex, but they make sure the word gets out that, oh, they're psychotic, they're on pills. And I always say to my clients, it's the people who are not on pills that you have to be scared of. Somebody who takes care of themselves and says, I need help. That's a good person. That's a person you can
the crazy ones don't go to therapy. Right. a really emotionally disturbed person, people that are really crazy, don't think they are. I have
Right.
seen crazy people. They think they're fine. You see politicians who are obviously crazy and who think they're fine. I won't mention any names. They can have severe dementia or whatever it is, okay? But they think they're fine.
We
There's
could fill in
no,
any name of just about any politician.
that's right. They have no self-awareness. And they will constantly accuse the other person of being crazy. So I have to protect my sanity while I'm being called crazy. One of the things I did was I adopted a pretty strict food plan so that I am being seen as a reliable, responsible person who keeps a plan. I keep a sleep plan and a food plan. That began to give me back my sense of sanity. I don't want it from pills. I don't want it from psychologists because they don't understand what's going on.
Will that work to create a stable plan if the children are half the time with the ex, with their other parent?
That's
Meaning
a
they go to
crazy, right,
sleep at 10 o'clock at night when they're with parent A, and parent
right.
B is no, 7 o'clock, we're in bed. At
That's right.
parent A, they eat hot dogs and French fries every night
That's
for
right.
supper,
Right.
and cereal and milk. And by parent B, there's, broccoli and organic, I mean, we don't have to go all the way
Right.
there, but
Quinoa. Okay, you got quinoa and
quinoa and,
broccoli.
and healthy
Okay.
food with no sugar
And
and
we
no treats.
clean, right, and we clean and we keep our environment clean. And then the sugar daddy or or whatever, the
Right.
abusive one is letting them watch pornography and filling their minds with trash. And the court system will not accept this. They will not see it. They want equal. It doesn't matter if the children are being molested and abused and whatever, they're
Right.
blind.
We can't change the system. So
That's right. So
is
what
it
I have
enough?
to do, right,
I
it's
have
not
to do what
enough.
I can do.
That's
So
right. All
I
I
just
can
want, can you
do,
give a word of encouragement to parents who are the healthy parent and trying to create
that's what I
stability
want to do.
and
So
consistency,
I
that even
have to
their
be,
50% is worth its weight in gold.
now the kids are going to be messed up from seeing this. Okay. If I spend a day or two in Gaza and then I spend a day or two at home and then I go back to the prison and then it goes different. Okay. Now the kids are very confused. That's why I call myself Malkata Petronot, the Queen of Solutions, and why I don't get angry, because they're going to see the other one getting angry a lot. Now I'm burning inside. I'm grieving. I'm losing my children. I felt when I got divorced, it was like watching my kids and what they were being told and the poison that they were told about me. It was like watching a riptide pull them out. I'm on shore and I'm watching them being pulled out and drowning in the waters out there in the riptide and being pulled out, and I can't save them because if I go out to save them, I'll be caught in the whirlpool myself.
Wow, what a strong mushroom.
And I have to watch this every day. I have to let them go for their visitations and watch them being pulled out to the riptide. And then they come back and it takes them 2 days to recover. And by the time the 2 days are finished, they have to go back again. And then I have to, okay. So it's this no-win situation that everybody tells me. If I stay in the marriage, I die. By the time I got out, I was 37 kilo. That's about 76 pounds.
Wow.
I was,
Wow.
I had what's called traumatic blindness and deafness. I couldn't digest any food. Now, everybody else says, but he's fine. But what else? So it's just words. I'm the type of person whose body and mind, I am affected. Not everybody is affected the way I was. I'm an empath. I'm a sponge. So I'm affected by this. So when people say, oh, it's words. What is it? Words. So he tells you you're crazy, or he doesn't like your food. He won't eat your food, and whatever. And you don't know how to clean or cook, and you're ugly and you're stupid and whatever. Okay. So, and I have to act as if this doesn't bother me. It's very painful. I have to hide my grief and I have to be the queen of solutions. And I have to keep, so this, what helped me was to keep this strict plan. And I stayed for a long time because I didn't want those visitations, but I paid a big price. Okay.
So
So
what's the solution? What is
there's
the
no
clean
solution.
solution
There
today?
isn't. Yeah, look, everybody says if I stay, I die. If I leave, I kill my kids because they're going to be full of shame in it. So I waited. I waited till my youngest was one day after his bar mitzvah so that I could give them all these tools that I teach and teach them that there is a secure, reliable person who, even though I was, inside, I was dying, but to be a very secure person. And to my grandkids, I can be that secure person because they see, I watch my weight, I watch what I eat, I watch what I buy. And even though I'm quite, I have moods and whatever, I have a lot of physical and emotional scars, and I have to take calming supplements. By the way, I help everybody avoid psychiatric pills because once you've taken one pill one day, then you'll lose your kids. Then they'll use that forever against you, that you're crazy and you won't be able to get custody.
I'm not sure that today that
Okay,
actually
I don't know.
is.
That's the way it was
Oh.
then, that the husbands will
Right,
force the
that was
child.
different.
She's
Now
after
it's
birth.
very accepted, and the
Okay,
courts
you took
actually
one pill.
appreciate. This is
Okay,
something that definitely has
okay.
changed.
So
That
back
the
then,
courts
30 years ago, right?
definitely appreciate a person who takes care of themselves, including goes to a psychiatrist and they're prescribed an
But then you're
anti-depression
the crazy one.
medication and
Once you've
takes their
been,
medication.
what I do is give people, I have all kinds of wonderful supplements like acetyl L-carnitine and L-theanine and all kinds of supplements and B vitamins to keep people away from the medication so they won't see themselves as crazy. Because usually people will define themselves if you're called crazy your whole life, you'll define yourself as crazy. So I have a whole list, which I'm happy to send you, of the supplements I take to keep my nervous system, to repair my nervous system, to stay calm, and to appear like a happy, normal person. I have to take NAC is wonderful, by the way. This is
So if I could ask a question.
Yes.
So we were talking about, the children are a ping pong and the houses, mother's house and father's house can sometimes be extreme opposites in terms of temperament, stability, food, rules, that drives the child crazy.
Right.
So
So what I would do,
I think what our listeners, at least what I want to hear, right, is that we have to focus within our circle of influence.
That's
and
right.
My circle of influence is me providing my children, even if it's only 50% of the time or 30, whatever I have with them, that these are stable, routine, loving, safe places. And that 50% is me doing my 100% of what I can.
That's right. So that's the most I can do. They see that there's a stable, reliable, responsible person who is not impulsive. I teach them, with every child gets a little notebook in which they write down their victories when they were successful in overcoming the impulses of the lower brain, because they're going to see on the other side a very impulsive person who just does whatever, the moment, tells them to do. And they're going to be the poisoning that goes on. Now, I'll take my crown off. So some divorces are ki'ilu. There's two people who just don't get along and they don't agree. But that's rare, especially in the frum world.
Very rare.
Very, very rare. People have to be, there usually is infidelity, homosexuality, some kind of addiction. Yeah, mental illness, right.
And severe addiction.
Right, severe addictions.
I found lately that one of the most common reasons for divorce that I have dealt with, and my colleagues as well, is the use of medical marijuana.
Oh, yes.
And how it has
potheads, right.
Yeah.
Potheads and also sex addiction. A lot of men have sex addictions. And they treat their wives like objects. And they're sometimes turned off to their wives because when you have a sex addiction, you get very turned on only by women who are acting like objects with no feelings. And that's a severe addiction. So it's like you said, I'm gonna take control of my side of the road. So I talk a lot about the children's victories. I give them a lot of salashim. I have these little notebooks.
I had them with my older kids, and I had the notebook.
Okay, the notebooks.
Blue and white, the original one.
Right, good. Okay.
Yeah.
And I write down every day, let's focus on what we're grateful for. And let's focus on when we overcame the impulses of the lower brain and went to the higher brain. Because the poisoner, like you said, will give them pornography, will give them junk food and no rules. And the kids will think, oh, that's freedom. Isn't it fun at that person's house?
Yeah.
Or if
and they tend to run away to that parent's house. But
absolutely.
what I found is that it doesn't last more than a couple months.
It could be months. With me, it was a few years. Okay, with me, it was a few years, but the more I was proud of myself and I did my work, the more they tended to come back.
Right,
So
absolutely.
We're grieving. We will grieve forever. We will never stop grieving. We'll never stop grieving the influence that they have on the kids in terms of pornography and anti-religion or fake religion. Like they're the most machmir in the world, and we don't do this, we don't do, and the rules and regulations makes the kids hate religion and hate their bodies. The damage is enormous. So we are grieving. And then we have to act like we're fine and we're managing our emotions. So that's okay. I am still going to be the queen of solutions, and they're going to see somebody who is more or less smiling, calm, acting very calm, hearing. Okay. I don't talk much about my emotions, but I have these rulers. Did you have the rulers back then?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So we measure the pain. Okay. When I got divorced, I remember my 13-year-old, he was so ashamed. It was just, the embarrassment was so enormous. He didn't want anybody to know. So I was just, number one is accept their feelings. How did you feel when he said, oh, your parents got divorced? Okay. How did that feel? Where were you? Okay. So on one side, this is the ambulance. This is extreme pain. And I let them just, you have your feelings. Yes, it makes sense. I believe you. It's very painful. How are we going to use this? How are we going to, first of all, let your kids express their feelings. How do I feel? How do you feel? How does the other side feel? Okay. And then talk a lot about, yes, there's a lot of junk food and junk thoughts around. How do we oppose those? I had a young woman, seminary girl, before she went back to America after finishing her year, she called me, she said, everybody in my seminary is just nuts. These girls are hysterical. They don't have any tools. And she says, I'm the only one with any tools because I was brought up with Emmet. Her mother was a student of mine 20 years ago, and she was brought up with the ruler and the salashim and the pinkas and the brain dance and the Emmet tools. She says, I'm sane. I know how to go from here to here. Nobody else ever learned how to do that. Now the dark triad is keeping me from teaching that in the school system. I went to all the seminaries. Can I teach these girls mental health skills? No. Can I teach them parenting skills? No. None of the seminaries, none of the, it's like very interesting. No skill training. So one of the other things I did for my kids is I taught them what I call the brain dance. Okay. And you put these cards on the floor. When kids are 4 or 5 years old, and there's 4 cards. One is saying I experienced a temptation or a negative impulse. Something irritated, frustrated, disappointed me. That's step number 1. These are on the floor, and we're doing the brain dance. I have some little serotonin on this I can send you. And then I say, and what did your baby brain tell you to do? hit him, kick him, spit on him. Okay. I say, yes, that's normal. This is the place where you validate their feelings and describe their negative impulses. And then I jump to number 3. Now we're up here. Are you ready to go to your upper brain? And they say, okay, let's find a solution. Because you don't want them to stay in the emotion for too long. They
Right.
found that with trauma victims, sending trauma victims to therapy where they're just sitting and talking about how miserable they are will make them more miserable. You need to to help them find solutions, activities, ways to help others, and that brings them up. So we jump to here, and then you give them a big hug. Good for you. I'm so proud of you. So these are,
I think us adults also need to do this.
yes, I do it on myself all the
Not only for
time.
kids.
Yes, I'm doing this with a lot of trauma victims now. People are very traumatized by October 7th, and it's awakening a lot of so much pain because many of us felt like we were emotional hostages,
Yes,
living with
yes.
a terrorist. Now, there are tons of emotional terrorists, and you know you're with an emotional terrorist because you're constantly being humiliated and intimidated and threatened. And there's no real connection there. I have,
Right.
by the way, a lot of men going through this, and they can't get divorced. These sweet men whose wives are emotional terrorists, and they're beating the kids and putting them down. And I have these men who can't get divorced because they're scared. I'm going to send them to her every other weekend. What's she going to do?
Right.
What kind of poisoning is going to go on? Okay.
On the other hand, though, the poison that's happening there, that the children are learning that this is a normal relationship, or this is okay for Abba to receive this abuse, and it's okay for Ima to act like that. That's also
Right.
tremendous damage.
It is. It's a no-win. Divorce is a no-win.
Yeah.
It's really no-win.
It's
You're
a
gonna,
no-win, but
right.
you know, collateral damage, you gotta, damage
Right.
control as much as possible. And every situation is different. Every
That's
family.
right. It depends on
No
how
two families are the same.
violent or abusive the person is and what their addiction is. Okay. So if they're never home,
Right.
good, then you're lucky. But if they're home a lot and they're very possessive, I have a whole group of mothers who have been calling me lately about their daughters marrying these very possessive men that have isolated them and kept them from having any contact with family and isolating their daughters and having full control over them in the name of religion and forcing them. It's all a horrible situation.
It
So
was interesting what you said about October 7th, because on October 8th, I was positive that I'm gonna have no more business. Everyone's gonna make up. Peace is gonna, we have, now that we have such great enemies. Couples are who's gonna get divorced when children have been ripped apart from their families, spouses have been killed. And I discussed it with my colleagues, and we all have had a tremendous boost of divorces.
Yeah.
From since October 7th. And I think part of the reason is exactly what you said. People are like, wait a second,
I don't want to
I
live
am a
with terror.
hostage too.
I'm a hostage.
And I want to be, I could free myself.
That's
I don't need
I'm
to
in a
wait for
hostage marriage.
anybody. I don't need
Right.
any deal negotiations. I don't need the Red Cross. I don't need the government. I could get, I don't need to choose to be
A hostage in a
a
hostage marriage.
hostage.
Right.
And people got a lot of strength
That's right.
from this to make
And they
these,
began to see what is an emotional terrorist.
yeah. And the psychological torture has really, wait a second, this is my life.
This is my life. Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people woke up.
And then they
Attention.
got the help that they needed and made steps.
So, psychopathy, psychopaths are very callous. They're cold, they're callous, they don't have a conscience, they don't care how people feel, they don't have their own feelings, they don't have fear, sadness, or love. They're not capable of those 3 things, but they can put it on very nicely around the social workers and the judges. They can act.
They're
And
Emmy
it's
Award
Emmy
winners.
Award
Every
winning.
single one of them.
Right. Love, they can act, oh, I'm so loving, I love her. I don't know why she's so upset. I don't know what I did wrong. And
Right.
I'm so sad. Okay, but they're really not capable of those three emotions.
No.
And it's estimated that on a spectrum between 2 and 30% of people are on that spectrum.
Wow. That's high numbers.
Yes, darling.
Very high numbers.
And they're so charming until they have you in their clutches.
Right, right,
Terrorists are very charming. They're great actors.
right. All the stories of terrorists who worked for, even now on October 7th, many of the terrorists had worked for these families for
Yeah,
years.
wonderful. They
They
were
had
their
given them
friendly.
clothing and toys for their children.
Yeah,
They'd driven them to the hospital, got them
yes.
care in Israel, and yet turned on them in a second. Wow. Okay,
So what I want to do is
just
I
to
want
sum
to make
up, if
people
we could
aware.
summarize
Okay.
the great tools that we gave, and that is that to focus on what we can give to our children, building them up, helping them find solutions, helping them realize that they're a lot stronger.
Yes, and that we are going to use it. We are not miskenim. We're not victims. Okay, we are being victimized, but we're going to use this. I want on my grave. If you have emotional pain, spiritual gain. And I brought my kids up with this. I brought them up with these 39, what I call 39 sanity cards. I have them in card form. And it just says, what is my solution now? How do I go from here to here? And I have 39 different ways. And I have 3-year-olds that are using the cards. And when my kids got older, and if they didn't want to use the cards, they realized, I said, I'll pay you. I will pay you half a shekel for every card you use that helps you go from here to here and calms you down. And I paid, that was their allowance. 5 shekels, right? Because a therapist is like, they can charge 100, and I don't know, 1,200, whatever. I want that, and they learned. And by practicing with these cards, I have them in my home. I have lots of cards here for anybody that wants them. And we would go through them. We would talk about them. And I would say, we're going to acknowledge what's going on in your lower brain. Yes, there's a lot of pain and grief down there. But now let's go up, and we're going to use the situation for spiritual gain. And that was their allowance, up to 5 shekels. That's 10 cards. Okay.
Amazing.
10 cards. Sometimes they would say, can we have another 2 for 6 shekels? Yeah, good investment.
Amazing, amazing.
Okay. So I
Dr.
love
Adahan, thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
is definitely part 1.
Good. We'll do some more.
We'll have a lot more. We'll get into even more details of resilience training.
Okay. Resilience.
And also, I think maybe our next discussion, and our listeners are invited to send in their questions, is if I'm in trauma and I have to fight so hard to tread water, how do I save my children? So God willing, that will be
Yeah.
that's the answer. We don't need a podcast, just Hashem.
we can actually get stronger. Emotional pain brings us to spiritual gain. And that's what I want to help people do. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Kol tov.